Department, where's your emergency?
1046 North State Street. It's Trinity Evangelical Lutheran Church. The roof is on fire here.
Okay, so you're on 9th and State?
Yes.
Okay, and what do you see exactly, sir?
The entire roof is on fire. Apparently they're putting in a new roof, and I don't know how it caught, but it's going.
Okay, I do have the fire department on the way. I have them sent.
May 15th, 2018. And as I went to flip the switch off, something caught my eye, and I looked and I saw a piece of cloth falling down from a scaffold, and the cloth was on fire. And then I saw the fire jump from the scaffold onto the roof.
I got a call from Hunter right after he called 911, and he said, our church is on fire.
From the south side of I-94, I could see the column of smoke. Our dispatchers were receiving a crushing amount of phone calls reporting something's on fire because everybody's seeing it from a different vantage point.
We heard the sirens and that sort of thing going on, and we didn't know what it was.
The news came on, and yeah, everybody's following it very closely. It was a shocking day.
But saw the smoke, and it was just, I mean, the flames and the smoke, it was like, I can't believe it.
That's when life kind of changed.
Right now they are still really targeting the church with water. They are spraying the church from every single angle.
The collapsing roof captured in this stunning and heartbreaking video. The one alarm fire quickly turned to 2, 3, and 4.
It was growing like as fast as I could conceive of what was on fire. It was jumping and growing, and I remember being able to feel the radiant heat from across the street.
The church and the adjacent building are clear. The inside, there was no fire showing. Inside, it appeared to all be on the roof.
When I had confirmation that the fire department was on the way, the very first thing I did, I went throughout the building and I opened all the doors because I didn't want some firemen coming with their axes and chopping through these doors.
I don't think most people really think of firefighters as sentimental folks, but you know, you really stand there just going, ah, you see the window failing because you're never going to replace that. We try very hard to preserve those sorts of things, but sometimes the fire just wins. Ladder 2 and Ladder 9 got their main body of water flowing. We were able to start seeing the knocking down of the main body of fire.
Founded in 1847 by German immigrants, Trinity Lutheran Church was Wisconsin's first Lutheran congregation in the Missouri Synod. Located since 1878 at its current site, the Victorian Gothic Church by architect Friedrich Velgut is built with cream city brick, a limestone foundation, hand-carved woodwork, and a 200-foot north tower holding 3 historic bells. Interior treasures include stained glass of the Gospel Writers, altar paintings by Friedrich Whaley, and wrought iron chandeliers by Cyril Kalnick. In May of 2018, a new roof was being installed when the tragic fire broke out. The next day, once it was safe, members of the congregation got their first look at the damage.
You could see the whole roof was missing. I went inside, kind of surveyed the situation, and just looked it all over. And
I came in here and I gathered up everything that I could get a hands on. So there was a lot of damage. I mean, the debris in here was waist deep practically. And we tried to save as much as we could.
Oh, yeah. So we went up the scaffolding and kind of in the back and look down at the organ and it's heartbreaking to see the mess. Everything just melted and wood was gone.
There were certain people in the insurance industry, there were certain people from our own synod that said, bulldoze it down and we'll rebuild someplace else.
But the majority of the building was in place, and my first thoughts was there's an awful lot of building left. You know, this can be put back together. This is doable.
And there was just a love for this building, and there was enough to save, there was enough that we could rebuild. It was unanimous.
Driven by the congregation's determination to rebuild, Wisconsin's finest artisans and craftsmen were assembled to restore the historic church. A Milwaukee firm led the architectural and historic preservation efforts for the church's restoration. Their leadership was instrumental in blending modern technology with traditional craftsmanship to ensure the church's restoration would honor its historic significance while preparing it for the future.
Mark and I were in the sanctuary the day after the fire.
Just the main bones of the building, the main structure, the bricks and the mortar and all that were still intact.
And so we kind of made a commitment to restore the building in a very disciplined way, but maybe without a wood roof structure to a congregation who had just suffered that kind of a loss.
Initially, we had to support the vertical masonry walls because they were unsupported. We worked with a structural engineer at Pierce Engineering.
We designed some steel beams that goes against the backside of the wall, so basically stiffening the wall so it doesn't topple. And that's the first thing that we installed.
Maybe we can work on getting this pile dumped out of here.
Once the structure was stabilized, attention turned to gathering what could be salvaged. Teams carefully collected and organized items, from fragments of wood and metal to pieces of stained glass, all remnants of the church's rich past awaiting restoration.
Every piece of wood seemed to have 10 nails sticking through it, and you had to be careful where to put your feet so you didn't run a nail through your foot. Here we hauled the pictures out of here, hauled them over to Conrad Schmidt for preservation work.
The murals are on canvas, a fabric, a porous material that would absorb all of that smoke damage. So when they came in, we kept them separate from the rest of the studio for a time because of that odor. There were some tears in some of the canvases, but we are experienced in repairing that kind of damage.
To give you an example, this is some of the pieces that we would pick up off the floor. And obviously we can't use these anymore, but again, we preserved everything. You don't assume anything at that point, you gather everything you can. Doesn't matter how big or small.
I can only compare it to like an archaeological dig, to where you're finding these little bits and pieces and twisted metal, and it's like, where do you start?
Surprised that more hadn't burned. I mean, you saw a lot of water damage, you saw a lot of damage from the beam structure, but kind of hopeful that there was so much still intact. It was good to see that it was still there and there was still something to work from. So that was hopeful.
This is a wax catcher candle holder that came off of a Kolnick candelabra. This was found in the rubble on the left side of the altar.
All salvageable items were carefully cataloged and prepped for restoration. As the church cleared of debris and the charred old roof rafters removed, artisans throughout the region worked in their studios, each focused on restoring a vital part of Trinity's legacy. Meanwhile, architects and engineers prepared for the intricate process of manufacturing and installing the new roof structure.
We started with the outside shell, as kind of shown here. We replaced the roof with a steel structure.
Building and installing the new steel roof trusses was a massive job that required precision and strength. Each steel truss had to be meticulously customized and fitted individually, as every part required specific adjustments to align with the unique and often oblique dimensions of the 150-year-old structure.
I love very old buildings because I thought that the building wants to tell me something. So I want to listen to what the building wants to tell me. I had an opportunity to learn how it was built. When we build something new and fitting in the old, because the dimension may not be accurate and the walls may not be perfectly in plumb. You know, one distance for the one truss may not work for the other spacing. So yeah, we had that challenge.
The restoration brings a unique opportunity to usher the church into the 21st century. While preserving its historic beauty, the renovation incorporates modern comforts and efficiencies, like air conditioning and a state-of-the-art heating system to replace the steam heat that once silently warmed the congregation beneath each pew. Also added was insulation to provide excellent acoustics and a sprinkler system for fire safety. These updates, cleverly hidden from sight, not only preserves the church, but also ensures it will remain a welcoming, comfortable space for generations to come.
The structural steel that's holding up all the plaster in the drywall was pre-bent by computers, using all the scans and all the computer work that the architects had put into it. It was all bent by computers and it came out like a big erector set.
You can see from the underside how the vaulting fits underneath those trusses.
The skin, the inside skin, the arches, all started taking shape. There aren't as many people out there doing it anymore, and a couple people came out of retirement just to work on this church and do the plaster skin that's on the top of 3 layers of drywall.
Once the plaster work was complete, attention turned to the interior paint schemes, transforming the church into a canvas for vibrant color and meaningful symbolism.
We decided to work with Conrad Schmidt on the paint schemes.
Any historic building, it's important to respect the past but also keep your eye on the future. Trinity was an especially interesting project. When the parish was deciding how to rebuild after the fire, there was a lot of discussion about whether we should return to the original historic decoration or whether we should restore the decoration at the time of the fire. They were really interested in a timeless look. Ultimately, we ended up with a new scheme that looks more toward the future. So the artists here at Conrad Schmidt helped them design an interior scheme with meaning and beauty that's going to stand the test of time. The decorative painting on the interior is a series of stencils full of symbolism for the church, full of meaning and traditional colors. The murals that we've worked on are part of the altarpiece. There's a series of 6 murals that rotate throughout the liturgical year that we've conserved for Trinity.
It's just an adhesive to prevent more flaking when I'm trying to do cleaning around them. Like these huge ones, I have to use a different approach, but some of these small areas, I just go in and kind of work around the edges of the big missing space and catch those edges of the paint and make sure they stay where they're at.
As restoration continued on the mural paintings, focus was shifted to another of Trinity's cherished features, the chandeliers. Created by Milwaukee's renowned metal artist Cyril Kalnick, whose work also graces other Milwaukee landmarks, such as the Pabst Mansion, these fixtures suffered extensive damage from the fire.
The church had 2 of them. They go back between 1880 and 1900. The beams that came down in the fire pretty much destroyed one of the candelabra and badly damaged the other.
What we need the people for is to lift the light fixture up in the air. We went ahead and the one light fixture that had fallen down in the pile of rubble, I said, let's go ahead and hook onto this chain, and we had just enough capacity with the crane, and we lifted that chandelier out of a pile of rubble.
Complete twisted wreck, hardly able to even see what it was supposed to look like. We came up, picked it up on a trailer, And then from there, it was the fact of tearing everything apart, taking everything down to bolts, nuts, and we started to heat, bend, and weld, and sometimes even refabricate new parts to where we ended up with what we have now.
It goes like that.
Once all the bits and pieces were carefully restored and repaired, the chandeliers could finally be reassembled. But the work wasn't over yet. A father and son electrical team from the Milwaukee area rewired the chandeliers, ensuring they would once again shine brightly in the restored church.
Everybody's awestruck, and me too, by the size. It's just about 900 pounds, which is light, and when you look at the size of it. It's about 8 feet in diameter, it's 13 feet tall without the chains, but then you've got 25 feet of chains with the medallions in between, so it's sizable.
The chandeliers, highlights of Kulnick's artistry, are now also symbols of both resilience and restoration. The organ at Trinity was more than just a musical instrument. It was the heartbeat of the sanctuary.
The organ, of course, right in the main fire, especially on one side of it. It's amazing in some respects how much of it actually survived.
Because it was burned from 2 feet on up, was gone. But the sound boxes were still intact.
William Schulke, who built it, German-trained organ builder, I think his family was in the organ business, and then moved to Milwaukee in about 1875.
Schulke was a member of the congregation, and his pride and joy was the organ that he built for this church.
Extraordinary workmanship, and even the design of the organ itself in terms of mechanics, very clever and complicated, and so beautifully built, just nice little details. Well, the organ had some lovely romantic sounds in it, and full and rich sound. So it ultimately played an awful lot of different literature quite well, from Baroque music to Romantic to even some modern music. It was surprising how well it worked.
Cable down, 20 feet.
I don't know, they grabbed the wood pipes, took those out. The wind chests, where all the pipes sit, is how do you deal with this? I said, well, what we're going to do is strap it to hook through a crane and have the crane operator put a little upward tension. And then the 4 guys, I said, just cut through the legs, building frames. Up it went, up and out.
You got it. Thank you.
So it was really sad. It was a sad, sad day that we lost that organ, because you can't reproduce it. We can get close to it, we can make it look the same, but it's never going to be exactly the same because of the way Schulke put his heart and soul into building that thing and the way it was built. And that's one of the sad things.
The altar, that was the first thing to come out. We lifted up the top 3 arches, brought the 8 columns out, and then the stage out. And that all came back to the shop in a couple trailer loads. Then that 3-arch piece came down to the floor very carefully and very slowly, and then that got brought here to the shop on the same trailer as well. And then the next step is to soda blast all the old finish off of it. So we started with a baking soda, kind of like a sandblaster, but not as aggressive. That takes all the finish off, but it leaves the wood grain not harmed. So then after that happens, then some sanding will happen, but a lot of the pieces start getting assembled and then resanded, refinished, and put back together. And that's the short answer. A lot of the carvings on the altar and the pulpit were made out of horsehair plaster. So the horsehair was actually a binder, much like fiberglass. But over 150 years, it deteriorates, it crumbles, and it came apart. So there are a couple of samples of these things after the fire, but very few. So we were fortunate in the sense that out of each one of these parts, we could get a digital scan, and we'd get a digital scan in a 3D rendering. And I can program that for a CNC. And we'll cut those pieces out of foam. And then they get glued together, sanded, and then colored to replicate what the original horsehair plaster looked like. Is if it was plaster before, we'll do it in foam now. If it was wood before, we make sure we recreate it out of wood now. And that may happen on the CNC as well, or it may happen by hand. Some things are getting turned on a lathe. Some things are still being traditionally manufactured. When we're doing these capitals, each column has a variance a little bit, and depending on the architecture of the building or depending on how the plaster guys finished it, there may be a variance from, you know, an inch deep or 2 inches, maybe just an eighth. But so each one gets measured very carefully. But yes, every single part of it's custom. The pews are probably some of the most ornate that I've seen. All damaged by the lumber that came down from the roof. The fascinating part with that, there were about 10 or 15 of them that weren't completely destroyed. We took those all apart, denailed them, and machined them and used the material to make a lot of the carvings on the altar and the lectern for the basement.
After exhausting several off-site temporary spaces for worship, the congregation turned to their own church basement, despite the fact that it had also been severely damaged by the fire.
And this whole lower level, it looked like something out of a horror story. We decided to put the chapel down here for temporary use, knowing we had a big long road ahead upstairs.
The transformation of the basement began with the team finding creative ways to repurpose damaged materials. In addition to the lectern being crafted from reclaimed pews, the charred roof beams from upstairs were used to create a new floor for the altar downstairs.
So we took all the beams over at Ben's shop and took all the chars off of them and sent them through some planers and some sanders. And you see the altar floor here, that's actually made out of all the roof timbers. It's all the burnt beams.
This temporary worship space in the basement, built from the remnants of the church's past, is a powerful reminder that even in the face of devastation, the congregation's faith and commitment to their church remains unshaken.
We worked with Oakbrook Esser to go ahead and remove the windows as they were. They started in one of the most important areas was the altar area, and they were making patterns and took the dimensions. So they started hauling the stained glass back to their studio.
The first thing I guess we thought about was we need to preserve as much as we can of what was left. So let's get everything out, bring everything back to the studio, and then that's really where it starts. And everything was very carefully recorded and put in legal boxes, and everything was very well organized relating to its location in the church. This is one of the Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. This is what would be left of the head, and the rest of that would have come, you know, that's quite a bit missing there. But pieces like this, if we flip that over, there's a little bit of detail in there that shows us what the design element was, and we know this is coming back down this way too. So even though we're not using this exact piece, it will give us a lot of clear direction to reproduce the windows.
It's kind of like detective work. It's pretty fun in that way, where you go and look at, in this case, the fragments that we had and some old pictures and different things to try to discover what it looked like originally.
And this is part of the process for reconstructing, because 3 of the 4 were pretty badly damaged. You know, 2 of them were almost completely damaged.
Paul realized that the stained glass that was in place was in pretty bad shape, so we're actually going to reuse some of the parts of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and all the other stained glass will be all reproductions and new glass, so that it can be good for many years to come.
Just the figure portion of each of those windows is about 16 feet tall. And what you see on this table, This table's about 16 feet tall, and the width is the full width of the window, and the height, that's pretty much the whole height of the window.
Looking at a pattern, you can discover a little bit about how the original designer from, in this case, like 100 years ago or more, you can discover what he was thinking about. You kind of get into the mindset of the past. It's neat. This section right here is about as high up in the window as you can go. There's a rondelle, a circular window, right up on the top. And this is just one small element of it. It'll actually be hard to see so far up there, but it will look nice, I promise.
After the designing and all of the layouts are done, the next big step is the glass cutting. It's cut very simply in a way with a standard. You could use a steel or carbide cutter. They're all cut the pattern. You cut the patterns out, you cut the glass to the pattern, you paint all the details on that glass, and then the step of assembly is called glazing, and that's where you take each individual piece of glass in a came, in a lead came in this case, and you fit that came around each piece. And then once that's done, it gets soldered together and joints on both sides. And then there's probably a good 10 steps involved, all labor intensive. That's the big part of what we do, is the labor intensity. So the church is some of all the parts for sure, and the word, the music, and the people.
On Reformation Day 2024, Trinity Lutheran Church welcomed the public to the sanctuary for the first time since the devastating fire, drawing a standing room-only crowd. The event was a heartfelt celebration of the church's resilience and enduring community presence, as the congregation and guests admired the beautifully restored space.
There's a reason God left this building here, and it was certainly because the city of Milwaukee needed this light on a hill. That's what this building means, is that this is a place where God's word goes forward. And the preaching and the sacraments and all the memories with the new people who are going to be making the new memories. We're going to have a lot of babies baptized in this church, and that's why we're still here. I truly believe that.
Although there is still much work to be done to complete the restoration, this gathering symbolized an important milestone, highlighting Trinity's rich heritage and its renewed commitment to serve as a vibrant space for worship and community life.